Hi, in this video I will show you how to work with the Trello.net API for C# against a Trello board, which will be this one. So let's start in Visual Studio and just create as a sample a console app. This can work with .NET 7, 6, 5 core or .NET Framework. The only dependency it has is the JSON.text. So let's make a console app and let's just call it my first integration. And let's put it in my repos. We'll just make this .NET 6, but again, you can choose whatever .NET version. Everything should work. And to keep it old school, let's just do it like this. So once my system gets running, we have a normal hello world. And now we need access to the Trello.net. And we can see over here, it's called Trello.net. So we could use the CLI, the package manager, and so on. I will just use normal Visual Studio here, but whatever ID you use, you can just do it here. So we go to browse and write Trello search, and we'll find it here. We will install it, and as you can see, the only dependency is .NET Standard, which is common, and system.text.json, which is the built-in version of the JSON serializers. We install that, and we should be ready to go. So the main class you need to know about in .NET is the Trello client. So we can go in and say new Trello.net Trello client. And the Trello client requires two required fields and then a few optional fields. The first one is the API key and the token, and I have a previous video that I'll link to on how to get those. So I'll just grab it from a small notepad I have on the other screen. And these, of course, you shouldn't share with anyone. But in this case, once you see this video, these API keys and tokens has already been deleted, so you can't use them for anything. So these are the two things. We should, of course, not put them directly in code. We should put them into some kind of storage or key vaults on a cloud, depending on how you secure things like normal. So let's quickly make it a bit simpler to look at. So let's put this into an API key and this into a token. Then you have two optional things. One is various options, and one is the HTTP client. Let's talk with the HTTP client first. Inside the Trello client, there will be a static HTTP client, but if you want to provide the HTTP client that is being used instead, you are allowed to do so using that parameter, else you can just stop here. In the similar manner, the options, if we have a look at those, at time of this recording, there's two options. One is an extra confirmation of allowing to delete boards. So there's a method to be able to delete boards in the Trello client. But you need to also set this to true in order to do that. And the same manner is if you get exceptions, how much should the exception expose in terms of the URL? Should it show the API key and token and so on? We will just leave them out for now. Because the default options are what most people need. And then let's make a client equals Trello client. And now you can do everything from here. Everything is just directly here, where you can add things, you can archive things, you can close things, delete things, get things, and so on. So let's try to get the board. So let's say get board async, and everything is say asynchronously. So we just need to put async up here. Go. And let's say await. And in here, we need the board, and you can see it says it can either use the short version or the long version. I have a separate video on how to get IDs, but let's quickly go to a sample board here. And here's the short version that I will just try to use here. So let's put that in and get our board. Let's set a breakpoint and run it to see if we have some access to this and we haven't done anything wrong. So let's run it. And we have run it, and we have a board which is called my sample board. Here's the long version of the ID, and we have the various things about this board, the URL for it, and so on. So we have access, and now we can begin to do various things. So let's start by trying to add a new list. So you see here we only have a sample list, and we want to add one more list. So let's say await client.add list. And in order to make a list, we need a list object. So we say new list. And the only thing a list needs is a name. So let's call it my cool list. And it needs a board ID. And here you can see it will warn you that it needs the long version of the board ID. This is just a Trello API having two versions, but only the long version can be used for everything. So in our case, we'll just say board.id because that's the long version. And that will return us a list, which is the new list. So let's try to run this code. And we get a new list back. And in order for the next things we want to do, let's quickly grab this ID, which is the list ID. And we can also see in our Trello board that we have a new my cool list over here. So very nice. Let's move on. And let me just save this ID. For further use. And I will comment this out so we don't make the list and again, because if we did, we will get an exception, of course, because, or we wouldn't actually, because multiple lists can have the same, but we don't want to spam our board with multiple lists. So if we have a list, we can, for example, also make a card. So we can say await client.add card. And we can make a new card. Need a list ID. That was the reason I saved that. We need a name. My cool card. And we need an optional description. My description. Take this piece of code and make it into an object here. And in here we can see there's various different things that we can set. For example, if we want a due date, that it should be due today. The dates are all in UTC time, so it's date time offset instead of just date time. So let's say it's just now we have our due, and you can of course, just like any other CSAM object, set the various different things, and some of them you can't set. So for example, you can't give it a new ID. So if you try to do that, it would of course not work because it's read-only. But we can make a new card. Let's do this. Because you shouldn't really use this for other than input card, because this new card will have its ID and all the different created dates and such things. But let's run this. Let's put this here and run the code. So now we have a new ID for this cool card. This one didn't have an ID because it was just the input object. And we have my cool card, which have a due date of today's date of this recording. So as you can see, it's a very simple API to use. And if we look at await client, add cards, add lists, get boards, add a board, so we can make an entire new board, add checklist to a card, archive all cards in the list, archive a card, archive a list, close a board. Then we have something called just delete async. This is some custom methods if you, as there's something we haven't exposed yet in the Trello.net API. You can do that on your own. You just need the URL suffix of the system. Delete board, delete card, get async, which is again a custom, get anything might not be exposed, get a card, get cards in lists, get cards on the board, get the cards on the board filtered, so you might only want the closed ones, for example. Get the checklists, get the checklist on the board, get the checklist on that card, and so on and so forth. You can see there's various different things you can do, and also generic post and put for add and update, reopen, update cards, update list, and so on. So everything is here as you need. If there's something missing, just go to the GitHub page. Let's quickly go there and see what's there. So there's a link to the GitHub page where you can go in and add issues and so on. And also here you can see some of the examples I just did today, how to get the IDs and so on. So with that, thank you for seeing this video, and I hope you get going with automating your Trello board. Thank you.